The rain hammered down on the streets of Chicago as Officer Danny Martinez pulled his patrol car to the curb. His partner, Officer Lisa Chen, squinted through the windshield at the figure hunched near the convenience store entrance. The dispatch call had mentioned a suspicious person loitering, possibly intoxicated. "Let's make this quick," Danny muttered, grabbing his flashlight. The woman appeared to be in her late 40s, wearing a torn military jacket that had seen better days. Her dark skin glistened with rainwater, and her hair was matted against her face. She swayed slightly, her eyes unfocused as she leaned against the brick wall. "Ma'am, we need you to step away from the building," Lisa called out, her hand resting on her belt. The woman didn't respond immediately. Her lips moved silently, as if she were counting or reciting something only she could hear. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Danny approached closer, his tone firm but not aggressive. Suddenly, the woman's head snapped up. Her eyes locked onto Danny's with an intensity that made him pause. For a brief moment, he saw something flicker across her face, something that didn't match the disheveled appearance before him. "I said step away from the building," Lisa repeated, moving to the woman's other side. The woman pushed off from the wall, stumbling slightly. A bottle fell from her jacket pocket, clattering on the wet pavement. The store owner, Mr. Kim, had called the police after she'd been sitting there for hours, scaring away customers. "We're going to need to see some identification," Danny said, pulling out his notepad. The woman fumbled in her pockets, her movements uncoordinated. She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, a few coins, but no wallet, no ID. Nothing. No identification at all? Lisa's patience was wearing thin. The woman's mouth opened, but only a mumble came out. Her words were slurred and incomprehensible. Danny exchanged a glance with Lisa. They'd seen this before too many times. Another person lost to the streets, to addiction or mental illness or both. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back," Danny said, reaching for his handcuffs. That's when everything changed. As Danny's hand touched the woman's shoulder to turn her around, she suddenly straightened. The transformation was so abrupt that both officers stepped back instinctively. Her spine went rigid, her shoulders squared, and her chin lifted. The unfocused haze in her eyes cleared, replaced by a sharp, penetrating gaze that seemed to pierce through the rain and darkness. Then she saluted. It wasn't a casual gesture or a mocking imitation. It was a crisp, precise military salute, the kind that spoke of years of discipline and training. Her hand moved to her brow with perfect form, fingers extended and joined, thumb tucked, arm at exactly the right angle. "Commander Victoria Hayes, United States Space Force, serial number 793826441 Alpha, she said, her voice suddenly clear and strong, cutting through the rain like a blade. Danny's hand froze on his handcuffs. Lisa's mouth fell open. "Special Operations Division Task Force Orion," the woman continued, holding her salute. "Authorization code Delta Sierra Foxtrot 779. The slurred speech was gone. The stumbling movements had vanished. Standing before them was not a homeless woman, but someone else entirely. Someone whose bearing commanded respect despite the torn jacket and matted hair. Danny's mind raced. Space Force? Commander? This had to be some kind of delusion. A fantasy cooked up by whatever substances were in her system. But something in her eyes made him hesitate. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," Lisa said, though her voice had lost some of its authority. "I am calm." "Officer?" Victoria replied, lowering her salute. "I apologize for my appearance. I've been on a deep cover operation for the past 18 months. Deep cover? Danny repeated, skepticism dripping from his words. "I understand your doubt," Victoria said, standing at ease now, hands clasped behind her back in a perfect military stance. "But I need you to contact Colonel Patricia Lawson at Peterson Space Force Base. She can verify my identity." The rain continued to pour, but none of them seemed to notice anymore. Mr. Kim had come to the door of his shop, watching the scene unfold with confusion. "Look, lady," Danny started, but Victoria cut him off. "I know how this looks. I know what you see. But I'm asking you, officer to officer, to make that call before you process me." There was something in her voice, a quality that Danny couldn't quite name. Authority? Certainty? Or was it just the practiced deception of someone who'd told this story before? Lisa pulled out her radio, looking at Danny for confirmation. He nodded slowly. "This is Unit 12 requesting verification on a possible military personnel," Lisa spoke into the radio. Subject claims to be Commander Victoria Hayes, U.S. Space Force. The response crackled back immediately. Stand by for verification. Victoria remained perfectly still, rain streaming down her face, her posture never wavering. The torn jacket suddenly seemed less like a homeless person's clothing, and more like a disguise that had served its purpose. The wait felt eternal. Danny kept his hand near his service weapon, not threatening, just cautious. Victoria hadn't moved an inch, still standing at parade rest as if she were on a military base rather than a rain-soaked Chicago street. Mr. Kim had retreated back into his store, but Danny could see him watching through the window, phone in hand, probably recording the whole thing. The radio crackled to life. Unit 12 patched through to secure Channel 7. Lisa's eyebrows shot up.
Secure channel?
Those were reserved for federal operations, homeland security matters, things way above a street cop's pay grade. She switched the channel, and a new voice came through, deeper and more authoritative. This is Colonel Patricia Lawson, Peterson Space Force Base. To whom am I speaking? Officer Lisa Chen, Chicago PD, badge number 4592. Ma'am, we have a woman here claiming to be Commander Victoria Hayes. There was a pause. Then describe her. African-American female. Approximately 5'7", late 40s. Currently wearing a torn military jacket and... That's her, the colonel interrupted. Officer Chen, I need you to listen very carefully. Commander Hayes is operating under special orders that I cannot disclose. What is her current condition? Lisa glanced at Victoria, who remained motionless. She appears to be under the influence of something, ma'am. She was stumbling, slurring her words. That's part of her cover. Officer, I'm going to need you to release Commander Hayes immediately and provide her with any assistance she requires. A military transport will arrive at your location within 30 minutes. Danny shook his head, stepping closer to Lisa. With all due respect, Colonel, we can't just take your word for this. We need proper verification. Your skepticism is noted, Officer Martinez. Danny Martinez. Officer Martinez, I'm transmitting my credentials to your department now, along with Commander Hayes' service record. Your dispatcher should be receiving them momentarily. The radio squawked again, this time their dispatcher's voice cutting in. Units 12, I'm showing federal authorization codes coming through. This is legitimate. You're ordered to comply with Colonel Lawson's instructions. Danny looked at Victoria, really looked at her this time. The woman staring back at him didn't look homeless anymore. She looked tired, worn down, but there was steel in her eyes, the kind that came from seeing things most people couldn't imagine. Stand down, partner, Lisa said quietly, unclipping the handcuffs from her belt and putting them away. Victoria's posture relaxed slightly. Thank you, officers. I know this is irregular. Irregular is one word for it, Danny muttered. Commander Hayes, what exactly have you been doing for the past 18 months? Victoria's expression hardened. That's classified, Officer Martinez, but I can tell you that what I've been doing has kept a lot of people safe, including everyone in this city. They moved into Mr. Kim's store out of the rain. The store owner looked nervous but didn't protest, especially after Lisa flashed her badge and asked for some coffee. Victoria sat on a plastic chair near the back, accepting a steaming cup with both hands. Her fingers trembled slightly, the only sign that her perfect military composure was a facade, albeit a well-practiced one. How long since you slept? Lisa asked, sitting across from her. 48 hours. Maybe more. Time gets fuzzy on the streets. Victoria took a long sip of coffee, closing her eyes briefly. Thank you for this. Danny leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You want to tell us what's really going on here? Victoria considered him for a moment. How much do you know about the Space Force, Officer Martinez? Not much. Satellites, space surveillance, that kind of thing, right? That's what we tell the public. Victoria set down her cup. The truth is more complicated. 3 years ago, we detected anomalous signals coming from outside our solar system. Not random cosmic noise, but structured communication. Lisa nearly dropped her own coffee. You're saying aliens? I'm saying we detected something that couldn't be explained by natural phenomena. That discovery changed everything. The Space Force shifted from monitoring satellites to monitoring threats we didn't know existed. Danny wanted to laugh, to dismiss this as the ramblings of someone who'd been on the streets too long. But the way Victoria spoke, the certainty in her voice made him listen. What does this have to do with you pretending to be homeless in Chicago? He asked. We're not alone in monitoring these signals. Other countries are too, and not all of them have Earth's best interests at heart. Intelligence suggested that a foreign operative was using Chicago's homeless population as cover, gathering information about our response protocols to these signals. So you went undercover, Lisa finished. For 18 months, yes, living on the streets, moving through shelters, listening, watching. The operative I was tracking used homeless networks to move information, thinking no one would notice one more person struggling to survive. Victoria pulled back her jacket sleeve, revealing a thin, nearly invisible device wrapped around her wrist. This has been recording everything, mapping out the entire network. 3 days ago, I identified the operative and transmitted their location to my team. They made the arrest this morning in Detroit. If the mission's over, why are you still out here? Danny asked. Because I needed to be extracted carefully. If I just disappeared, it would raise questions, possibly alert other operatives we haven't identified yet. I was supposed to be picked up tomorrow. But she gestured vaguely at the store, at the situation. Your convenience store owner had other plans. Mr. Kim called out from behind the counter. I'm sorry, I didn't know. You were scaring my customers. Victoria gave him a tired smile. It's okay, sir. You did what you thought was right. The sound of vehicles pulling up outside drew their attention. Through the window, Danny saw 2 black SUVs, military plates, pulling up to the curb. That'll be my ride, Victoria said, standing up. Her legs wobbled slightly and Lisa reached out to steady her. Easy. Commander. 4 people in military uniforms entered the store, led by a stern-looking woman with silver hair and colonel's insignia. Commander Hayes, Colonel Lawson said, her expression softening slightly. Welcome back. The store suddenly felt crowded with military personnel. Colonel Lawson's team moved with practiced efficiency, one of them immediately stepping forward to examine Victoria, while another spoke quietly into a radio. Sir, we need to get her to medical immediately, a young officer said, looking at the colonel. She's dehydrated and showing signs of malnutrition. I'm fine. Lieutenant Graham, Victoria protested, but her voice lacked conviction. That's an order. Commander, not a request, Lawson said firmly. She turned to Danny and Lisa. Officers, I need to thank you for your handling of this situation. We were just doing our jobs, Lisa replied, though her mind was still reeling from everything she'd heard. You did more than that. You took her seriously when most wouldn't have. Lawson pulled out a card, handing one to each officer. If you're ever asked about tonight, you'll need to reference this case number. Everything else is classified. Danny looked at the card, black with silver lettering, an official seal he didn't recognize. What do we tell our sergeant? Your sergeant is being briefed as we speak. The official report will state that you encountered a military member who required assistance. Nothing more. Lawson's expression made it clear this wasn't negotiable. Victoria was being guided toward the door, supported by Lieutenant Graham. She paused, turning back to the 2 officers. Officer Martinez, Officer Chen, I meant what I said. What I did out here, what our team has been doing, it matters. We're facing threats that most people can't even imagine, and we're doing everything we can to keep them at bay. Why tell us any of this? Danny asked. Why not just leave us thinking you were what you appeared to be? Because you showed respect. Even when you thought I was just another person on the streets, you treated me with dignity. That matters more than you know. She straightened, fighting against her exhaustion to offer one more crisp salute. Danny and Lisa both returned it instinctively. As the military team filed out, Mr. Kim approached the officers cautiously. What just happened here? I honestly don't know, Danny admitted. But I think we just stumbled into something way bigger than a suspicious person call. Through the window, they watched as Victoria was helped into one of the SUVs. The vehicles pulled away, disappearing into the rainy Chicago night as quickly as they'd arrived. Lisa's radio crackled. Unit 12. Return to station for debriefing. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork and questions from their sergeant, a gruff man named Carlos Rivera, who seemed just as confused as they were about the federal involvement. The official report was sanitized, stripped of any mention of space signals or alien contact, reduced to simple facts. Military personnel assisted, federal authorities contacted, situation resolved. But as Danny drove home that night, his mind wouldn't stop working. He thought about Victoria, about 18 months living on the streets, watching people ignore her, step over her, dismiss her as nothing. He thought about the things she must have seen, the sacrifices she'd made. His phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Are we really not going to talk about the alien thing? Danny smiled despite himself and texted back, "What alien thing? We just helped a lost service member. Remember? Right, sure, that's definitely all that happened." He put his phone away and drove on through the empty streets, looking up at the sky through his windshield. The rain had stopped and a few stars were visible between the clouds. Somewhere up there, maybe something was looking back. 3 weeks later, Victoria Hayes sat in a debriefing room at Peterson Space Force Base, finally clean, rested, and back in uniform. The recovery had been slow. 18 months of malnutrition and exposure didn't heal overnight, no matter how many doctors assured her she was lucky to be alive. Colonel Lawson sat across from her, a tablet displaying Victoria's mission report. "Your intelligence led to the arrest of 7 operatives across 4 cities. That's exceptional work, Commander. Thank you." "Ma'am?" Victoria's voice was steady, professional, but Lawson had known her long enough to see the shadows behind her eyes. "How are you really doing, Victoria?" The use of her first name broke through Victoria's military bearing. She slumped slightly in her chair. "I'm struggling, honestly. Being back in civilization, it's harder than I expected. I keep thinking about the people I met out there, the ones who really are homeless, who don't have a military transport coming to save them. You knew that would be part of the challenge when you volunteered for this assignment. Knowing it and living it are different things." Victoria looked down at her hands. Clean now. Nails trimmed. No longer the grimy fingers that had dug through trash bins for cover. There was a woman, Margaret, at one of the shelters. She was a teacher before she lost everything. Brilliant mind, still sharp despite everything. She helped me more than she knew. Kept my cover intact when I slipped up a few times. When I left, I couldn't even tell her goodbye. You saved lives, Victoria. Not just hers, but thousands of others who'll never know how close we came to a catastrophic intelligence breach. Victoria nodded, but the weight didn't leave her shoulders. "What's next for me?" "Medical leave for another month, then psychological evaluation. After that, we'll discuss your next assignment." Lawson stood, moving to the window that overlooked the base. "The signals have gotten stronger. We're picking up patterns we couldn't detect before. We need people like you, people who can handle the difficult missions. Are we any closer to understanding what they're saying?" "Our linguistics team has made some progress. It's not a language in the traditional sense, more like mathematics expressed through electromagnetic waves, but there are patterns that suggest intention, purpose, and still no one outside our community knows about this. The President knows, select members of Congress, a few allied nations. But a public announcement? That's above both our pay grades, Commander. Our job is to monitor, to protect, to be ready." Victoria stood as well, joining Lawson at the window. Below them, men and women in uniform moved with purpose across the base, each one playing a part in humanity's first real contact with something beyond Earth. "Do you ever think about what happens when the public does find out?" Victoria asked. "When this can't be kept secret anymore?" "Every day. And I think about people like you, people who've sacrificed so much to give us time to prepare. When that day comes, I hope we're ready." Back in Chicago, Danny Martinez couldn't let go of what happened that rainy night. He'd tried to follow the official line, to treat it as just another call, but his mind kept circling back to Victoria's words about threats people couldn't imagine. He found himself paying more attention to the homeless population during his patrols, really seeing them instead of just noting their presence. How many others might be undercover operatives? How many were just people who'd fallen through society's cracks? "You're doing it again," Lisa said from the passenger seat. They were on patrol, the same route they'd been running the night they met Victoria. "Doing what?" "Looking at everyone like they might be a secret space soldier." Danny laughed. "That obvious?" "You've been different since that night." "We both have." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "I did some research. Nothing classified, just public information about the Space Force. Did you know they've expanded their budget by 40% in the last 2 years? Could be normal military growth. Or it could be because someone up there thinks we need to be ready for something." They drove in silence for a while. Finally, Danny spoke. "Do you think she was telling the truth? About the signals, about contact with something out there?" "I think a lot of important people took her very seriously. The colonel, the federal clearances, all of it. That's not the kind of response you get for someone who's delusional." "So what do we do with that information?" Lisa shrugged. "Our jobs? We keep people safe down here. Let people like Commander Hayes worry about what's up there. But maybe we do it with more awareness, more attention to the people we might otherwise overlook. As if to prove her point, Lisa pointed to a figure sitting outside a closed restaurant. "Pull over," Danny did, and they approached the man, an older veteran judging by the faded Marine Corps jacket he wore. But this time, instead of just checking for warrants or moving him along, they talked to him. Asked his name, his story, treated him like a person instead of a problem. His name was George, and he'd served in Iraq. Lost his housing after a bad divorce and some worse decisions. He wasn't a secret operative, just a man who'd fallen and was trying to find his way back up. Lisa gave him a card for a veterans support center. Danny bought him coffee and a sandwich from the 24-hour gas station. Small gestures, but George's eyes showed genuine gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "Most cops, they just tell me to move along. You two are different." "We learned something recently," Danny said, "about not judging people by their circumstances." As they returned to their patrol car, Danny felt something shift inside him. Maybe that was the real lesson from that rainy night. Not the secrets about space or aliens, but the reminder that everyone has a story, a purpose, a dignity that deserves recognition. 6 months after the incident, Victoria Hayes stood on a stage at an undisclosed military facility, addressing a room full of Space Force personnel. She'd been promoted to senior commander and assigned to training the next generation of deep cover operatives. "The mission you'll undertake requires you to become invisible," she told the assembled officers. "You'll live among people who society has forgotten, and you'll need to remember your humanity while maintaining your cover. It's the hardest thing I've ever done." After the briefing, a young lieutenant approached her, a woman named Kelly Brooks who reminded Victoria of herself 15 years ago. Eager, determined, maybe a little naive about what service really meant. "Commander Hayes, I wanted to ask about the night you were compromised. The police report mentioned that the officers treated you with respect despite your appearance. How did that affect your mission?" Victoria considered the question. "It reminded me why I was doing what I was doing. Those officers, Martinez and Chen, they could have processed me like a criminal, dismissed me as just another problem to solve. Instead, they listened. They showed basic human decency. That's what we're protecting, Lieutenant. Not just buildings or borders, but the capacity for people to see each other's humanity. And the signals, are we any closer to understanding them? That's classified, Lieutenant. But I can tell you this, we're not alone in the universe and we're learning more every day. Your generation will likely be the one that makes first official contact. Your training, your sacrifice, it's all preparation for that moment." Later in her office, Victoria received a message through official channels. It was marked with the case number from that night in Chicago, the one Colonel Lawson had given to Martinez and Chen. The message was simple. "Thank you for your service. You changed how we see the world." It was signed by both officers. Victoria smiled. The first genuine smile in months. She pulled up her computer and composed a response, knowing it would go through several layers of military censorship before reaching them, if it reached them at all. "Thank you for seeing me that night, for treating a stranger with dignity, for reminding me why this work matters. You're proof that humanity is worth protecting. Stay safe down there." She hit send and looked out her office window at the star-filled Colorado sky. Somewhere out there, signals were still being received, patterns still being analyzed, and questions still waiting for answers. But down here, on Earth, in the small interactions between people who chose kindness over indifference, humanity was already proving itself worthy of whatever came next. Victoria returned to her work, preparing the next briefing, training the next operative, doing her small part in humanity's greatest adventure. And on the streets of Chicago, officers Martinez and Chen continued their patrols, seeing people a little differently now, treating each encounter with a little more care. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but sometimes the most important mysteries were the ones walking among us, wearing torn jackets and carrying stories no one thought to ask about. The future was coming, whether humanity was ready or not. But people like Victoria Hayes, Danny Martinez, and Lisa Chen were doing their part to make sure that when it arrived, humanity would meet it with the best of what it could be: courageous, compassionate, and ready to face the unknown together.